All right, Trevor. Good morning. Let's learn together something. So, as always with this week's Parsha, but I want to share with you something that happened yesterday, which I saw as being really interesting when I reflected on the concept that my day started and ended with with something having to do with a young man, a certain milestone that they achieved. So the morning started last morning with a bar mitzvah, a wonderful young kid, right, in our shul, beautiful, laned, everything, warm, Hamish, wonderful, mazel tov, fantastic. The end of the day, I spoke about this on my podcast yesterday. The end of the day ended with what's called a siyum. A siyum is, there's books behind me. These big ones over here, part of the Talmud. So every time you finish one of those tractates, one of those volumes, siyum just means completion. And when you complete like a significant amount of study, there's a big idea of celebrating that. We value what we celebrate. I always tell, parents, if they celebrate when their kid scores a goal, but they don't celebrate when they get 100 on a Chumash test, they'll say, oh, what's really worth celebrating is how well I play hockey, and they'll pursue that. So you have to make a big deal out of the important things. So if a person completes significant amount of study, you don't just say, okay, that's nice, move on. You stop, you celebrate. This family in their home, they made chicken wings, they had all their friends over. It was like a beautiful celebration. So what was really interesting is before they started this is a kid who's been on a great journey of growth, and he's just graduated high school. So he finished his first tractate. He decided on his own he was going to do this. And before we started the celebration, he wanted to daven mincha in their house. So he gave me a sitter to daven from. And the sitter that he gave me to daven from was actually the sitter that I gave him in our shul at his bar mitzvah. Like our custom in our shul, just I'll tell you what it is. It's interesting. Everybody gets a sitter, like our tefillos or whatever. But what I also do is I highlight one sentence about which I think will resonate with the kid. We all say the same things, but we think about things differently. So there's always one that I specifically highlight. So this kid happened to give me the sitter that I gave to him at his bar mitzvah. And it triggered that thought of, wait, that was funny. I was just at a bar mitzvah this morning, and now this kid, 4 years later, this other kid is reminding me, unintentionally, about his bar mitzvah. And I was thinking the following. I was thinking, which is a greater celebration, right? Is the greater celebration the bar mitzvah? Or is the greater celebration 4 years later, this kid finishing on his own after he's like already been inducted into the people and carrying on his journey? And I actually think you see this idea in this week's Parsha, the answer to that in a very powerful way. So this week's Torah portion is called Bahalotcha. Bahalotcha means, it's generally translated, I have in English over here, when you kindle, when you light. So it says Bahalotcha tanerot, that in the temple when they would light up the candles, and it goes on to explain what Aaron and Cohen, the high priest, would do. So the phrase Bahalotcha, I see we have some women on here, right? So if you're going to be lighting Shabbos candles, right? When you say your bracha, your blessing on Shabbos candles, Baruch Hashem Elokeinu melech haolam, right? You don't say Lahalotcha es haneros, to light up the candles. You say Lahadlik, to light the candles, right? What is this strange language of Bahalotcha, which means to like light up almost? That's why we called it to light up, right? What is it? Ole, like a person makes aliyah to Israel, means to go up. So it's a very strange word to go ahead and use when lighting candles. So Rashi comments two beautiful ideas. The first one, I believe, answers the question that we just asked, and the second one helps to give a hint on how the second one happens. So Rashi says, what does Bahalotcha mean? I'm going to read the words inside. I'm happy to send it around to people afterwards. It says, Al Shem Shahalav Ole. It's because the candle has to always be jumping up. But furthermore, Sarich Lahadlik Ad Shal Eves Ole Me'aleh. Translation, you have to light the candle enough so that it's lit on its own. So what does that mean? It means when a person's lighting candles, you could put your match to the wick and it's lit, but it's not really lit. The only time you know it's really lit is when you take the match away from the wick and it stays lit. That's why, by the way, there's an interesting one of the reasons why there's a custom that men often prepare the candles, the Shabbos candles, for their wives. So because we know that everything's always busy before Shabbos, you're always running around, and sometimes those candles have like a wax coating. So when you try to light it, it takes a little bit longer. No one has it a little longer. So there's a custom that part of what the husbands do to participate is they light it first and then they extinguish it so that it's easier to light the second time. Because if you light the candles and they go out, you haven't done anything. So the key to lighting candles is when you pull the match away, the wick and the candle stays lit. So Rav Moshe Feinstein explains, what does that mean? We know that candles always represent our wisdom, our Torah. And what does lighting one candle to another means? It means what we do is we share our knowledge and we ignite other candles, most specifically with our children, but the truth is with everyone we interact with. And sometimes we fall into this sort of illusion that if I put my match on the other candle and they're illuminated and they're lit up, that I've done my job. But it's not really true. Meaning you've only done your job if you've removed the match, the inspiration, the hand holding, and the candle stays lit on its own afterwards. That's when you fulfilled the obligation of lighting the candle, when it continues to go up on its own. And I thought within that Rashi is actually the answer to the question that we provided. Of course, there's beautiful celebration of a bar or bat mitzvah, mazel tov. But that's not the celebration. That's the beginning. The celebration is, okay, now that the fanfare is over and the big party's over and all the attention is over and the celebration is over and it's back to regular life and the inspiration has moved away. So what does the kid then do on its own? Or any of us? When we're away from that experience, the real success is what happens after the experience is over. Like I always say around the high holidays aren't what's successful or not. It's what happens after the high holidays are gone and we're back to the lows of everyday life. What have we retained that's really important? That's the step and the key behind it. The Talmud actually says it used to be that there was great celebration around a funeral, and more celebration than there was around a birth. What was the logic? The logic was when a person's born, okay, what are you celebrating? You're celebrating the potential of what could be, right? After 120, right, when a person's achieved what they've meant to achieve in this world and you look back, then you say, wow, what a cause for celebration. Look at the life that they lived, the values that they had, the growth, the impact that they made. Which is a greater celebration, the celebration of potential or the celebration of realizing one's potential? And therefore, it uses this words bahaloscha, means a person's always got to be going up and going up knowing that they can do it on their own. That's the key. And that's a challenge that while we say by a bar and bat mitzvah, boy and girl, the truth is it's a challenge that we all face, right? We're all in moments of inspiration. It could be a moment where a person's learning or thinking or whatever it is, but the question is, what happens after that, which is key. And for that, I think the second piece of what the Rashi says is also very important. It says something very interesting. Why does it say bahalota going up? It says because there were staircases. There was a small staircase in front of the menorah for the Kohen to go up the benkala, the step stool, in order to light the menorah. But they say he didn't really need to. He could have just like reached up and done it. It wasn't that big that he couldn't have lit it without going up the step stool. But he explains, Rashi, that no, even still, in order to light something, he had to be going up as well. So Rav Moshe Feinstein explains, what does that mean? It means if I'm going to try to ignite somebody else to go up, then I've got to be going up myself as well. It means I can't tell somebody else, listen, you should be doing this. It's so good for you. You should grow. You should fulfill your potential. And I'm a person who's satisfied with where I am and what I'm doing, and I'm not moving forward. The only way to go ahead and light a candle so that that candle stays illuminated is if I model it by actually doing that myself. So not only am I lighting the other candle for it to go up, in the process, I'm also going up. And I would even argue that probably, as we know, words are, talk is cheap, actions speak louder than words. Very often, the greatest form of being able to illuminate somebody else's candle is by living and being the message more than just by giving it over. It's funny, actually, I was just thinking, I remember during COVID, so obviously crazy time period, lots of things, shifted and happened. But one of the positives that happened, actually, this whole library behind me, I was working out of the office, so I organized my library and I had time to sit and learn a lot more at home. I think one of the things that I miss about COVID is we didn't have to go to events every night of the week. We weren't running, we weren't going. It was nice to just have a calendar that was like, we were finished. That was it. With a little bit of Zoom here and there. So I had time to learn, which was a beautiful opportunity because usually you're running so much. And I noticed something very interesting, that like all of a sudden my kids saw, oh, look, dad's learning. Like I'm just sitting there in my office, opening up a book and learning. And almost without even saying anything, I think I noticed that some of my kids just started to do that as well. They just said, hey, like this isn't just something dad does for his work or when he's preparing or running. He just thinks this is important. I guess it's kind of important, right? The modeling of what a person does makes the biggest impact towards being able to convey what that message is, and more importantly, for that message to stick. So that when I'm no longer there, or the one that's making them do it, they want to do it on their own. And that's always our greatest challenge, right? How do we ensure that whoever it is that I'm imparting something over after the experience is gone, that they continue to do that? The analogy that Chazal, that our rabbis give, is like a child learning to walk. The way we teach a child learning how to walk is we hold their hands. We could fool ourselves into, wow, look at this kid. They're walking. They're only 6 months old and they're walking. If you told the guy and be like, well, you know what, how about this? Just take your hands off for a second and see what happens, right? So then you know. So why do you hold their hands? Well, obviously, a person has to gain the experience of why it's good. In the abstract, it's impossible. The kid who's crawling around just thinks crawling is great. They get everything where they have to go. You're trying to educate them, saying, you know what? There's something about walking on your own 2 feet, which is just liberating in a way you can't imagine. Let me give you that experience. And once they see, wow, this is really awesome, then they try to recreate that and eventually do that on their own. So to here also, the importance of giving stuff over is very important. In the abstract, for a person to just say, wow, there's something so sweet about growth and about learning and about knowledge and wisdom and our traditions and our values, just saying it in the abstract is very difficult. So we live it with them. We impart it to them. We hold their hands through it. But the hope is that it's so powerful in what they say in Yiddish, geschmack, so delicious and enjoyable, that when we pull our hands away from it, that they just continue doing it on their own. And that idea of what happens when a person starts their journey as an adult, as a 12 or 13-year-old, of course, that's exciting. But the celebration is, what are they like not when they're 12 and 13, but when they're 21 and 31, when you inverse, when you read from English to Hebrew, as opposed to going from left to right, right to left. The celebration is what kind of 20-year-old are they? What kind of 31-year-old? And with each of us, what kind of individual we are when we get older. It's funny, and I know we're almost at our time limit. I just saw on a WhatsApp chat that I'm on with some people who share sources, and somebody asked for a source from the Piazetzner Rebbe, Rav Kalman. He was a tremendous sage that was murdered in the Warsaw Ghetto. And he has a line there about like when he turns 40, he's like, what does it mean to be a 40-year-old? The person wanted to find where the source was this from for his personal diary. And just the idea of just what does it mean to be a simple Jew as a 40-year-old? It's got to be different than what it meant to be as a 30-year-old and as a 20-year-old. And it'll be different, hopefully, when I'm a 60-year-old. It'll be more advanced. And that process of Ola, of lighting, means always ascending, always going up. And there's an infinite amount of growth and, trajectory upwards that we can all have. So just a beautiful idea, I think, on this week's Parsha, one that applies to others, applies to ourselves. And we should only be together for celebrations, both at the beginning of the journeys, but more importantly, seeing the tremendous success of the completion of one's potential at the middle and end of those journeys as well. Chevra, we'll close the recording. Wish everyone a good Shabbos. If anyone has questions, feel free. Hold on. Recording stopped. Yes.